So are you in the process of planning your RV adventures or maybe your RV life? And when you think about it, you think about all of the remote places that you're going to go, traveling as far as you can into the forest, into the desert, away from civilization, the noise, the distractions, going and exploring nature, the trees, being one with the trees and the sun and the mountains and the birds. Is that what you dream about when you think about your RV adventures? But the thing is, you still love the comforts of home. You love having a toilet and a shower and running water. So you might be asking yourself, well, how can I do that? How can I go out and experience all of that remote solitude in the forest in an RV? Is it possible? So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 4 things that you need to look for when you're buying an RV to go on boondocking adventures. All right, so let's get started.
There ain't nobody gonna do it for you. Got to find your own.
Hey friendlies, I'm Carolyn and welcome back to my life living in an RV. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I've been on the road for 6 years living in a Class C RV, going to some pretty remote, crazy places, really exploring a lot of the beautiful national forest roads in this country and BLM land, which is Bureau of Land Management, which is mostly desert. And I have gotten to some pretty cool places where I have had some really nice solitude. And a lot of you are like, how the heck do you do that? So I'm going to tell you today 4 things if you are planning RV adventures or RV life, 4 things that you're going to want to look for if you're going to be mostly boondocking. And especially if you want to boondock in some really remote places and not be restricted, you know, because there are some things that you're going to need to look for because there are certain characteristics of an RV that are going to be more restrictive for boondocking. They're going to limit where you can go and how far you can go than others. So the first thing that you might be asking yourself is what's going to be better for boondocking, a Class A RV or a Class C RV? I chose a Class C for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it's got the Ford, mine's a Ford chassis, Ford E450. So everything that I have heard, even still, I mean, everything I heard in my early research and even still, it's a lot easier to work on a Class C RV. It's a Ford chassis. You can take it basically any place that's big enough to work on a Ford. You know, it's a van. My RV sits on a van chassis. So that makes it a lot easier to work on, and that's part of the reason. You know, it's also got more of an aerodynamic front to it. So it's not as boxy. It's not as big. I feel like I can go more places just because of the shape of it and the fact that it's on a van chassis, which to me just seems sturdier than a Class A and what the Class A is built on. So the reasons I choose a Class C for boondocking is it's not as boxy, it's more aerodynamic, so you're not going to have this big huge front and this huge window in the front that you're going to have to worry about branches snapping into and you know, breaking the windshield and things like that. So that's the reason I chose a Class C. The second consideration, which is a really big one, is size. Of course, the smaller you can go in your RV, the more places you're going to be able to go. I'm in a 24-foot Class C. I started in a 29-foot, and I definitely am able to go more places than I used to be. You know, I still see roads. It's like, oh my gosh, I would love to be able to go down that road. If I had a truck or a van, I would be able to. You know, I still have this big 10-foot high, 8-foot wide box on the back. So I'm still going to be limited compared to a van or a truck or maybe not so much a truck camper. I have a friend who has a truck camper and they're about as big as I am. So that's the other thing. The smaller you can go, the more options you're going to have for boondocking, the more roads that are going to be passable without causing damage. Number 3 that I want to talk about that is related to length is the size of the overhang in the back. The longer that spaces between your back tires and the end of your RV, the harder it's going to be to get into some places that have a lot of dips, that have a lot of bumps, that have a lot of rocks, all of which I have gotten stuck in and have dealt with. But my 29-foot RV had an overhang that was at least 2 or 3 feet longer than this is. So you're going to want to look at the amount of space between the tire and the end of your RV, because you think about it, you're going down a dip, that's what's going to drag. And you can see I've got duct tape back there, Eternabond tape. You're going to drag in an RV, you know, if you're brave enough to go on some dirt roads in the forest, inevitably you're probably going to drag. But the smaller that space is, the smaller that length is from the wheel to the back, the less chances you're going to drag and the less chance you're going to cause damage, and therefore the more places you're going to be able to go and explore. So number 2 was the size. You know, one of the considerations for being able to go more remote and find better remote solitude boondocking is the size. The smaller you can go, the better. A 20-foot is going to be better than a 24-foot. 24-foot is going to be better than a 29-foot. So, you know, think about that. When you're thinking about the priorities for your RV life, what's going to be more important for you? Do you want more space inside because you want more comfortable living? And if you're more than one person, that could be a very huge consideration. If you're only one person, you might be able to get away with less space inside. The other thing is, how much time am I going to be spending inside? I work. I spend a lot of time inside, a lot more time inside than I want to. I would love to be outside more, but because I have to work, I have to spend more time inside. And that's part of the reason I like my Class C. So that's something you're going to have to think about realistically. How much time am I going to spend inside? So how important is big space, a lot of space inside? If I want to spend most of my time outside, maybe I'll set up a tent and I'll sit outside. Maybe I'll even work outside when the weather's nice. Maybe I'll only be in nice weather places. Then maybe you can get by with less space inside. So again, it's about priorities. What's more important to me? A lot of space inside or solitude? And being able to go where not a lot of people go. It's something that you're going to have to decide. So that's the size issue. And then also related to the size issue, which are usually pretty related, is the overhang between the back tire and the end. So look for the shortest overhang between the back tire, because again, you'll get less scraping and less damage when you're going on bumpy, sometimes 4-wheel drive roads. Yeah. All right, and the final thing, the fourth thing you're going to want to look for in an RV if you want to go remote and do boondocking and travel crazy roads in the forest is the clearance. The clearance from the ground to the bottom of your RV. And you might need to get under there and look, because this right here is not the lowest point underneath my RV. I've got gas tanks and other things. Well, actually, now that I look at it, that might be the lowest, but just double check, get under and look and see what the lowest point on your RV is, because again, higher clearance means the more rocks you can crawl over, the more potholes and ruts and things like that you can drive through without scraping out the bottom of your RV and your gas tank or black tanks or whatever. So that's definitely going to be a huge consideration for finding an RV to go as remote as possible. What is the clearance? If you guys remember several years ago, I am a wannabe van lifer. I would love to live in a van, but there's just things about it that don't suit me. And I was looking at road treks a few years ago. And some of the road treks that I looked at were kind of nice and maybe enough space, I thought. But the clearance, literally, because they had all this fancy stuff on the bottom, there was like this much clearance. And I'm like, yeah, no. What's the sense of having a van if I'm going to have this much clearance and scrape and ruin everything and can't go anywhere? So that van wasn't going to work for me because there wasn't enough clearance. And when I started shopping for this RV, when I wanted to get rid of my old RV Matilda, that was one of the biggest things for me. I knew I wanted to downsize. I knew I wanted a smaller size, and I got rid of 5 feet on the length, which I haven't missed at all. And I looked at the overhang, but really, like for me, I think the biggest thing that I really had to be really mindful and I was really careful about was the clearance. This thing, you can't tell here because of the way the ground is kind of shaped, but I've got really, really good clearance on this. Really good clearance on this. So I don't have a problem with scraping the bottom or anything like that. The biggest problem I have is scraping the rear end, you know, that overhang. You can't, in a Class C, in a Class A, you can't do anything about it. You have that overhang. That's just the way it is. It's going to be an issue no matter how big it is, but again, the smaller the better. So finally, the last thing you're going to want to look for is how much clearance you have. The more space you have from the ground to the bottom of your RV, the better, the more places you're going to be able to go. So just to recap, if you are looking for an RV to recreate or reside in, and you want to go as remote as I do or more remote, here are the things you need to look for. Number one, I think a Class C is going to be better than a Class A. I don't see a lot of Class A's where I go. I don't see a lot of Class C's where I go, to be honest with you. There aren't, I go places oftentimes where I don't see even, the last couple places I've been in, actually, I have not seen other RVs. But when I do see RVs, I very rarely see Class A's. Class A's are just big and bulky and boxy. The second thing is size. The smaller you can go, the more places you're going to be able to go. Gosh, and I hope my mic is working. So the smaller you can go, the more places you can go. The third thing you want to look at is the overhang from the back tire to the end of your RV. The smaller that is, the better. And finally, the ground clearance. How much ground clearance do you have? The more, the better. So tell me where you are in your process of planning. Are you dreaming? Are you actively planning? Are you shopping for an RV, whether you're going to reside in it or recreate in it? Let me know below where you are in the process and whether or not you found this helpful. Thank you all so much for being here. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Hit that subscribe button, okay? You know, you've been here a while, you know you're watching my videos, you know you like me or you don't, but you keep coming back. So go ahead and subscribe, all right? And even if you think you are subscribed, do me a favor and double check to make sure you're still subscribed, because sometimes, for some reason, YouTube unsubscribes people. Also, check your notifications. Make sure you click that bell so that you're notified every time I put out a video. And check your Google preferences so that your notifications in Google, YouTube are on as well, or you won't get notifications even if you click the bell. So I appreciate you. Please leave your thoughts below, or just tell me where you are in the process of RVing and let me know. Do hashtag helpful if this was helpful. All right. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. In the meantime, be happy, be free. Hey, where's Sadie girl? Come here. We can't sign off without Sadie girl. Come on. Yeah, come here. Oh, she's such a, come here, say hi. I know they would yell at me if they didn't see you. Say be kind. Say be kind. And Sadie says subscribe. We'll see you soon. Bye.